How's it going, everyone? My name is Sean and welcome back to the channel. So if you're looking to get into guitar building, then you will notice, maybe from your own research or from watching other YouTubers like myself building guitars, that there are a lot of tools involved in this craft. It can be really difficult to figure out what tools you need to invest in to just get going in this craft, and that's where I'm coming in. Welcome to my essential tooling guides for guitar building. In this video, I'm going to be covering one of my favorite topics, which is hand planes. So grab yourself a nice hot cup of tea, coffee, whatever you want, get comfortable, and let's get going. Starting off, I'm going to address one topic, and that is the question of should I buy vintage or should I buy brand new? And the answer for that is, of course, complex. I myself really like vintage planes. I have a collection right here that is predominantly vintage. There are some exceptions, of course. I have a lovely Lie-Nielsen, it's number 62, which is definitely one of my favorite planes. But in general, a vintage plane can be, if it's not already, cleaned up, tuned, sharpened, and will operate perfectly for you. My most used planes, my number 7, my number 6, my number 3, they're all vintage. They all come from the turn of the 20th century, so early 1900s. And yeah, they work beautifully. If you were going to buy new, I would suggest spend some money. This may not be the best thing to hear, but don't buy cheap modern tools. They are pretty much not good. Manufacturing can be cheap, corners are cut, fit and finish just isn't going to be there, and that is going to detract from the performance of everything as well as anything else. If you've got slop in your adjusters, it's just not great. I would suggest some brands are like Clifton, Lee Valley, Veritas, Lie-Nielsen. Quangsheng is another great one that is slightly more budget minded. Check out all of them. They all offer most of the popular tools that you're going to want. They definitely offer everything that I'm mentioning on this list. In general, buy good quality new tools or look for some nice vintage ones. Starting off top of my list is a jointer plane. Now this can either be a number 6 or a number 7 plane. They both have their positives, they both have their negatives, but a jointer is absolutely necessary for getting started in guitar building. You will need this for jointing boards. They're great for a shooting board. They are handy for planing in your neck angle if that's the way you want to do it. There are many different things that a jointer is useful for. When it comes down to a 6 or a 7, for the most part, that is personal choice. The 7 is bigger, it's longer, it's more useful in certain things, again, such as planing a neck angle, where a 6 might be just that tad too short. A 7, though, is going to be more expensive and it's going to be heavier. Heavier is good and it is bad. You get more heft, so when you're actually planing it, you've got a bit more momentum, but you're going to get tired more quickly. Conversely then, a number 6, it's a really nice size for planing. I really like a number 6 myself. It is good for 99% of what a number 7 can do. Every now and again, you may find certain jobs, certain tasks that a 6 is just a little bit too small for. Again, planing a neck angle, this is the third time I've mentioned it. On my GGBO of 2020 build, I planed the neck angle into that, and my number 6 was about that much too short. I got it done, but it was a lot more difficult than it would have been if I had a number 7. So a jointer, top of the list, should be probably the first plane you're going to buy. Next up on my list of essential tools is going to be a smoothing plane. That's going to be either a number 3 or a number 4 size. You can go for like a 4.5, that's no problem. I guess you could probably go for a number 2. I've never actually used one because they are quite rare and quite expensive, but they would probably work. This size of plane is really handy if you're doing a one-piece angled headstock neck. After you cut the angle of the headstock, either with a saw, with a bandsaw, whatever method you are going to be doing it with, cleaning up that face is really good with a number 3 or 4. They also come in handy in so many other different ways. If you're doing a neck through, for example, after you put the wings on, the center section of the neck should be slightly proud. Number 3 or 4 will help you cut that down to flush much quicker and effectively. As for the difference between a 3 and 4, like the 6 and 7, this is down to personal preference. I love a number 3. I use my granddad's number 3, so I am biased in that sense. I find them smaller, they're tactile. They can be slightly more difficult to kind of register if you do a lot of things by feel like that. And a 3 is, I think, slightly more rare than a 4, but there is not much in the running with that. A 4 then conversely is slightly larger, it is wider as well as longer, so you have more reference area, more reference face, easier to find. They were, I think, the most common plane that were ever made, but again, there is really not much in the running between these two planes. Pick your favorite, pick one up, hell, pick one of each up. You use them both, see which one you prefer. I'm going to really quickly interrupt the video here, guys, and just ask you if you are enjoying the content, enjoying this video and any of my others, please, please, please subscribe. It helps me out a lot, helps YouTube, basically. You tell YouTube that, hey, this guy is doing something right. I can see from my analytics that most people watching aren't actually subscribed. It's something like 80% are not subscribed. So even if half of you guys did, just take 2 minutes, hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost anything, helps me out. I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, back to the video. Third on my list is going to be a block plane. I'm not going to really suggest different models or anything like that for these ones, but what I would say is look for an adjustable mouth, and I would prefer a low angle plane, personally. They come in either a low angle or what they call a standard angle, which is higher. Lower angle generally means that it will cut easier, but can be more prone to tear out. So that's your trade-off. I personally use a number 18 quite a lot, which is a smaller standard angle plane. Again, vintage. Mine is early 1900s as well. That is a standard angle plane, and it's really nice. I know a very common, very popular low angle is a 9.5. I'm also going to be making really nice, I hope, high-end infill style planes that are going to be bedded actually halfway between a standard and a low angle, so we should see performance best of both worlds here. If that's something you're interested in, keep an eye out, drop me an email or anything if you want to get put onto a list for potentially having one. It's going to be all handmade, heavier than most standard planes because it is an infill made of brass and wood. I am going to be making every component on it, including the blade and the adjustment mechanism. So that's something to keep an eye out for if you are looking for a nice, beautiful, handmade plane. Next up, and this is where it gets slightly less essential, I would suggest a router plane. Something like the number 71 from Stanley is great. Essentially, you're going to want to get one of these with a 6mm cutter. The main reason I will use a router plane is if I need to deepen a truss rod channel, which is 6mm or 1/4 inch wide. If you have cut your truss rod channel and taken off the template, then it's quite difficult to line that template back up, and it's a lot easier to come back in with a router plane and just do it. So it also does come in handy for certain other little things. If you need to deepen a pickup cavity, for example, I've used it for that before as well. There are a couple of different things that a router plane is just really, really handy for. One thing I do want at some stage is a really tiny router plane with a really tiny, like a 1mm cutter to use for inlay. Something I'm going to make at some stage. Yeah, I think that would be really, really cool. But add a router plane to your list. I think it's very useful. Not essential, but useful. Next up is another really not essential tool, and that is a tiny rebate plane. I have one that I use pretty much for binding channels. I don't find an awful lot of use outside of binding channels, or potentially if I need to get in close to a corner for a rebate, for example. Again, at the end of a neck through, getting right in there at the end of the fretboard where it meets the top of the body. Very handy to have a tiny rebate plane for that. Not essential. I would recommend if you are going to try and find one, get one that is at most about 10mm wide. That's 3/8, I believe, in imperial, fight me. Really, really handy little thing to have. Doesn't come out too often. When it does, it is invaluable. There is very little else you can use in place of these planes. I guess you can use a chisel and be really, really careful, but router plane just makes life so much easier. Pick one of them up if you can. Unfortunately, they are usually user-made, or I believe Veritas does offer a miniature rebate plane that also serves the purpose quite well. So that is pretty much the end of my essentials tools list. But I do have some bonus ones, because of course I do. There are always extra things that are just going to make life easier and nicer and just make it more enjoyable to build guitars. I have two different ones for this video. The first one is going to be a low angle jack plane, a number 62. I mentioned it earlier, I've got a lovely Lee Nielsen one here. I have used the Stanley one before, that was my previous one that got replaced by the Lee Nielsen. You will have seen these in a lot of YouTube videos. They are really popular, really, I don't know, flavor of the month at the moment, but they're really, really nice. They're so nice. If you can spring to get one of these, they are not cheap, but if you can spring to get one, I absolutely recommend you pick one of these guys up. They are really, really useful. They are beautiful on a shooting board, and they are really good for just general everything. Because they're a jack plane, they are a jack of all trades. If you've got something that is being difficult, a low angle means that it'll cut a bit easier. May risk tear out or may not like figured woods as much, but it will cut beautifully. I know you can get them with different blades that will transform it effectively from a low angle to a high angle, which will make it slightly more difficult to actually cut, but will deal with figured woods, for example, much, much better and prevent tear out. Really, really good planes to get. I would recommend it, but I would not say it's essential. And for the second bonus one, is not actually one. It's going to be thumb planes or miniature planes. I have ones that are about that long. They are fabulous. They are beautiful. If you need to put a little chamfer on things, put a little round over on things, fabulous tools. I've got a flat one that is so handy. I break it out quite often, not as often as I like, but quite often. And I've also got some convex ones, the ones that go outside. Concave, because caves go in. Yes, convex planes. And they are really nice. If you are going to be carving by hand, if you're doing an arch top, for example, or even a carved top, then these convex, I'd forgotten already, these convex planes are going to be a lifesaver. You can pick up expensive ones from the likes of Ibex, you can pick up cheap ones from eBay, from somewhere in China. I actually have cheap ones that I have tuned. When they arrived, they did not work. They were paperweights, but I've tuned them up, I've sharpened them up. You have to open the mouth on them and everything. It's a bit of a mess, but now they cut beautifully. They are excellent planes. I definitely recommend them if you're going to be doing any carving. Pick them up. And that is it. That is my list, guys. Let me know what you think of it. Let me know if you think I've missed anything. Are there some planes that I'm missing here? Do I need to buy more planes? Please let me know, because I want them. Let me know if you think there's anything here that is extra. If it's not needed, do you have one of the planes that I mentioned and you just never touch it? Let me know down below. As always, guys, thanks so much for watching. Hit that subscribe on the way out. Hit a like if you like it, if you find this helpful. Hopefully, if you've watched all the way to the end, you have found it helpful. Thank you so much. I'll see you all again real soon.